Now it's recording. Here, look up for me. Just a sliver of bone between us and Marcus' secrets. Relax. It won't be like ages 7 and that unpleasantness with your nurse.
Wasn't the nurse when I did that. This errand you want me to do in ore storage.
Oh,
the miners
man.
won't like it.
They're probably as narrow-minded as the miners in the colony is. Tormenting someone for being a little different. Listen. A good scare.
Yeah, they do.
What is this
I'm
guy
ready.
gonna do? Oh, this was the guy that put us in stasis before releasing the hunter in the eyeball.
Easy. If I can slip this material right into the brain.
In the brain.
Oh God. I can see the Marcus codes. It's been trying to show me. They're hungry. They're coming. They'll make us whole.
Will make us whole.
I see it now. The marker speaks.
The
We
Maka.
can answer.
Tell me how.
Come on. That's it.
Related rig activity.
Hi, my name's Kim. I'm a licensed and nationally certified Chinese medical provider. And today I'm going to talk about part 3 of the weird health symptoms that we've been experiencing over the last few months. And what I'm going to talk about today is Chinese medical diagnostics. And why I'm going to talk about that is because that's going to be kind of key to leading in to the scientific research that's been going on. Okay, so if you're ready, let's get started. So the weird health symptoms, right? Something's going on in your throat. You might feel pressure in your head that makes you dizzy. And then your stomach goes off. It almost feels, well, your stomach's acting like you have the flu and you don't, because you feel pretty normal. Besides that, your blood pressure suddenly spikes up and you can't get it down and you don't know what caused it to spike. And then you start getting heart palpitations and heart pain. Well, that's the outline of the symptoms. What does it mean in Chinese medicine? In Chinese medicine, if you're on the right track, the person's going to start feeling better after the first treatment. So it's really black and white in Chinese medicine. Either you're right or you're not right. And that's really different than what you find in regular medicine, right? Because in regular medicine, they'll put you on medication for 2-3 weeks and or longer. They'll wait until those 2-3 weeks are over, and then they'll have you come in and they'll look and see if there's any changes. Now, you might feel worse. You might have side effects. You might have no changes in your symptoms, but they'll wait until 2-3 weeks. So until you have this huge loading dose of medication in you. In Chinese medicine, it just doesn't work that way. Either you're on the right track or you're not. And why is that? In Chinese medicine, the thought is that illness is caused by an imbalance in the body. And that makes sense, right? You eat too much sugar and you're nauseous. So you have too much sugar in your body and you need to do something to get rid of that sugar. Or, you drink milk and your sinuses are all congested. And so you need to do something to get rid of all that congestion. We have these health symptoms because something that we did or something that's happening in the environment is too much for our body to handle. And so then your body responds by telling you that that was too much, whether it's a stomach ache, whether it's congestion, whether it's a headache. It will give you some sort of sign. That's the key difference between Chinese medicine and then regular medicine, because regular medicine is not going to ask you to change anything, right? And that's the true beauty of regular medicine. It's not going to ask you to participate in your health. It's going to look at giving you medications or surgery, and medications usually force your body to stop acting in the way that it wants to. That doesn't mean that the symptoms aren't going to keep on progressing. Just because you force it to stop expressing imbalance doesn't mean that the imbalance isn't there. And it also doesn't mean that the imbalance doesn't keep on progressing. And so when you're doing Chinese medicine, you're going to know right away if you're going in the right direction. And so let's look at what happened here. I'm going to look at 5-element theory because that's what I ended up having to go back to in order to identify where can I go from here. If we look at 5-element theory, the 5 yin organs, they're going to be the heart, the spleen, the lungs, the kidneys, and the liver. And we know that the spleen is the earth channel, and it's also going to be with digestion. The liver, a lot of times in Chinese medicine, the liver is associated with hypertension or high blood pressure. So I did a lot of work with the stomach and spleen channel. And at first it worked. And then as this thing progressed, it just didn't work anymore. And the stomach issues just got outrageous. So the stomach and spleen formulas, being that they weren't working, that meant that the origination or the cause of this was not in the stomach and spleen. And with the high blood pressure, trying to get that down, I was like, well, let's go to the liver channel because that's usually the most common cause of high blood pressure in the United States from a Chinese medical perspective. And a lot of that is because of all the stress, all the fatty foods that we eat. So then I went to the liver channel, and once again, absolutely no dent on the blood pressure. So 2 channels out of the 5, the spleen and the liver channel, it's not impacting it at all. The heart channel came in after the high blood pressure. So the heart channel was actually impacted because of the high blood pressure. So that wasn't the cause. That only left the lungs and the kidneys. I went with the lungs because of everything that was going on, right? We had COVID still wandering around at like 2.6% of the population. We had some weird flu going on. Everybody had lung issues from COVID. So I went for the lungs, and I went for that Qingfei Pai Duan. Now, I was really kind of hesitant at first to use that formula because it's a combination of 3 formulas. And one of the formulas would be for like horrible symptoms of allergies, right? So you would have a stuffy nose, your eyeballs would be watering, your nose would be snotting, your ears might be stuffed up. It would feel like you had allergies. And then another one of those formulas was for bronchitis. And if you've had bronchitis, you know how that feels. You have a fever, your chest is so congested, you're coughing and hacking, you feel horrible. And those weren't any of the symptoms that anybody was showing. They were showing none of those. But here's the thing, that Qingfei Pai Duan, that formula, key formula for COVID-19, and the definition that they put now with that formula is, let's see here. I'm going to read it to you because I won't remember this. So in general, Qingfei Pai Duan addresses when you feel normal, but somehow your throat is scratchy. You might feel a bit of heat in your forehead, and walking a short distance seems like running a marathon. That was really true. That was what people were feeling. So that was the reason for going for Qingfei Baiduan. And what was amazing is that it worked. It worked right away for people, and people noticed a huge difference within either immediately or within a day. What's neat about Chinese medicine? Well, like I said earlier, if you're on the right track, it's going to work right away. And one of the things that happened with Qingfei Baiduan is it really helped people out right away. And the other thing about Chinese medicine is when you are using a formula, or if you're using some sort of Chinese prescription, what that prescription or that formula does is it tells you where the problem is and what the problem is. When we're looking at a formula like Qingfei Baiduan, the formula says the problem is in your lungs, and that problem is about a ton of phlegm. So that's what got me thinking is I was thinking, how can this work? And phlegm in the lungs definitely can block the stomach. So if we look at 5-element theory, let's just put a roadblock on the lung channel, and all the energy coming out of the spleen and stomach and going towards the lungs is going to get stopped. Energy that gets stopped in the body initially causes pain. And then as it gets stopped for a long period of time, it causes phlegm. So then it's going to cause nausea. Pain comes first, nausea comes second. And then I was like, well, could it cause high blood pressure? Definitely. As things stop moving and it's blocking the liver also and the stomach, and then it's going to start blocking the heart, it can cause high blood pressure. And we see more and more about COPD and pulmonary high blood pressure. So that's kind of what's going on there. I could see how this could work. But if this was really working, where was the phlegm coming from? Right? I mean, aren't you wondering that too? Where is the phlegm coming from? That's a really severe type of phlegm. That's almost like pneumonia type phlegm, right? So I had to kind of think about it. And that's where I kind of came up with my hypotheses on what might be happening. It was with those hypotheses that I thought, okay, I'm going to go out and look at what's going on in science. Pretty sure I'm not going to find anything because these are pretty wild hypotheses. If this is what's really happening, I don't know. Something crazy has to be happening in our environment for this to happen. So I went out to science, and I'll talk about that in the next episode, okay? But first, let me tell you about my hypotheses. What was causing all this phlegm in the lungs? That I couldn't fathom what was going on here, because we're talking about pneumonia level phlegm in the lungs, and I just didn't know anything that could cause that. So I had to start brainstorming, and I was doing some brainstorming by myself, and I came up with a few different ideas. And the first one was, I was thinking back about 6-8 months ago, I started craving proteins, and I just couldn't get enough protein. It was the weirdest thing. I started eating more protein than I've ever eaten in my life. I was eating proteins at every meal, and if I didn't, I was starving. So that was weird, because when you crave foods, if you go through some of my episodes on clean eating, how do you help change how you're eating? One of the things I talk about is food cravings. And food cravings, there's a number of reasons for them, but one reason could be because you're lacking something in the body. Well, protein says you're lacking protein, and I couldn't think of anything that would have increased my protein needs. I wasn't working out, definitely was not working out. Whoops. Positively know that I wasn't working out. So not a lot of excess effort there. And So I couldn't think of why I would suddenly need more protein, but I did know that there was a small medical procedure that, I did and a lot of other people around the world did a year and a half ago. And that procedure made more proteins. It made a specific protein. So it told your body to make this specific protein. And so I thought, well, could that be what's happening? Could it be that medical procedure is still creating proteins in my body? Because that doesn't make sense, because they said that would deteriorate within a few days of being put into your body. If it's still making proteins, then I think we have a problem. But, I didn't have any ideas if that was true or not. And one of the things that would cause, though, is it would cause a shortage of resources, right? Because the body doesn't have a lot of excess resources to use. And so when you start telling your resources to create something you don't need, you're going to cause other problems. And so one of the problems that you're going to cause is food sensitivities. And I have an episode out here on food sensitivities that talk about that a little bit more. And so, that kind of made me think, well, what if this protein is still being made in the body and it's still taking resources? Well, if you think about it, your stomach turns over its resources every 2 days. So the lining, the epithelium, the inside lining of the stomach gets turned over every 2 to 3 days, quickest turnover in the body. And that would mean that if there was a resource shortage, the first guy to feel it, or the first guy to show you that, is going to be the stomach. Isn't that interesting? So, then I was thinking, well, there is some information to suggest that we might still be making that little protein. Well, I thought, what if it isn't that? What about, this medical procedure was supposed to improve our immune response. Well, in the environment today, they think there's this low-level chronic infection in the population right now of about 2.6%. What if that low-level chronic infection, what if we're constantly walking into those people as we're out and about, and that's causing this constant immune response, and that is what's creating all that phlegm? That could happen. Let's see here. I think I had one more idea on what might be happening. Then I was thinking that maybe there's a problem with the spike protein that was created. Maybe too much of it was made, or, maybe it continues to be made, or maybe it doesn't degrade. So some version of there's too much spike protein. And we know that spike protein has a preference for the lungs, so it naturally migrates up to the lungs, causing that level of congestion that creates symptoms that Chinese medicine would equate to bronchitis. And then I thought about that a little bit more, and I thought, because it's just a piece of that virus, it's not really creating an infection. It doesn't create an infection. Okay, so now my head's hurting from thinking too much. So in the next episode, I'm going to talk about what's going on in science. We're starting to see that censorship has stepped down quite a bit on this whole thing. And so more and more scientists are talking out. And I'm going to go over some of the stuff that's been released since President Biden signed into law in March that all classified documentation on COVID-19 and its origins has to be released. And so within the next 90 days from March, we are going to start seeing a lot of release of information. which is kind of interesting because some of that information has already been released. So we're going to use that as the starting point, and then I'm going to go back to these hypotheses that I had on this virus, and we'll see if they can fit into anything that anybody's talking about right now. Okay, until next time, I will catch you on the other side.